Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk a little bit more about air suspension problems on the Lincoln Mark VII. There are already a couple of videos on this channel where I discuss the air suspension on the Lincoln Mark VII. One where I show you how to run the diagnostic procedure to try and figure out what's wrong with it, and another where I show you how to replace many of the components in the air suspension system. So if you haven't seen those videos, you should check them out on this channel. So this car has brand new Arnott bags in the back. Everything was working good with it, and as you can see, it's staying up more or less in the front. But in the back, on the driver's side, it is bleeding down to nothing. If I come around to the passenger side, maybe I can show you in this tight spot, I still have that bag up. So it looks like it's just something to do with the driver's side rear bag. So I've run the air diagnostics on the car and it passes all the diagnostics. That means it's not an electrical problem, it's not a problem with the ride height sensors, it's not a problem with the air system controller. It has to be a physical leak. Now, it leaks down like this whether you leave the air system operational or not. The air system remains operational for quite a while after you shut the car off, like an hour or something. You'll see if you leave it operational, at some point the air system will engage and bring it back up because it's clearly leaking. And then ultimately the air system becomes inoperative after it's been turned off for a while and the car ends up down on its heels like this. So the next step is to get the thing up on the two post, get the wheel off. We'll get some air in the bag, hopefully, and we'll see whether we can find an actual leak. Maybe the bag's blown out, maybe there's a solenoid leak, or like around the O-rings or something like that. Who knows? But this is part of the annoyance of having one of these cars on air. I gotta say, I'm about this close to ordering a spring conversion for it, just so I can drive the darn car. What do you do when you suspect a physical leak? Well, you get the air system inflated, you get the car up in the air, and you spray a soapy water mix over anywhere that could leak, like the solenoids, over the bags, any folds on the underside, anywhere that could potentially be a leak, and you look for bubbles. That's what I did with this car, and I found that the driver's side rear solenoid was leaking. When I did the airbags in the car, the rear airbags were not actually going down. Everything seemed fine there. But I replaced the bags in the back and I replaced all of the O-rings with the exception of the internal O-ring inside the solenoid. Now, I kind of judged that I was just as likely to wreck the push lock taking that apart to get at that little O-ring as I was to fix anything by replacing an O-ring on a solenoid that wasn't leaking before I took it apart. I gambled and lost on that. It was leaking internally, probably past that O-ring. So what I decided to do was just replace the rear solenoids outright with some new ones. As I mentioned, the bags in the back were replaced with new Arnott bags just last fall. So when replacing the solenoids, I decided to buy Arnott solenoids. This is one of the new Arnott solenoids. They have a reputation for being a better quality solenoid than some of the like Dorman or whatever, although I'm not sure that's necessarily true. But what I did find is that this solenoid would not insert into the bag. And the reason is that the supplied O-rings on the solenoid tip here are too big. Let me say that again. Arnott's own air solenoid comes with O-rings on it that are too big to plug into their own bag, and presumably the factory bag or any other bag. It just would not go in. And believe me, I had it very greasy. I tried pretty hard to get it in, and I was just going to break something. So I remembered seeing one of the forum guys say that he thought that the kit O-rings, the replacement O-rings from Arnott, were smaller. And I happened to have some O-ring kits, some Arnott O-ring kits, and sure enough, the O-rings for the solenoid tip that come in Arnott's O-ring kit are smaller. I replaced them, put those O-rings on the Arnott solenoid, and it slid right in, no problem. So that's a little lesson for you if you're replacing it. Get yourself an Arnott O-ring kit, and then whatever solenoid you buy, if it won't go in, double check the O-rings are not too big, and if they are, replace them with O-rings from the Arnott O-ring replacement kit for the air solenoids, because they're actually smaller. I know it's kind of goofy, but that's what happened. Once I replaced the solenoid, put everything back together, now the car holds air. It's sitting up just fine. I've driven it. It's been sitting here for a couple weeks, no issues. So that was definitely the problem. If you've got one of these cars that is persistently down on its knees or down on its heels, and it passes all of the air diagnostic tests, you got to move on to a physical leak, find it with soapy water, and then replace the component that's bad. That might be the bag, that might be the solenoid, that might be the air line, or whatever, but that's the way you're going to fix it. Anyway, I hope that helps some of you guys who have got a frustrating air problem with your Lincoln Mark VII. We'll see you next time.